We are going to learn how to identify mixed numbers on a number line. Let's look at this number line. One of the first things that I notice is that the number line shows the distance from 0 to 4. I can see that there are points in between the holes, and so I know that this is a fraction number line. If I look at one hole, I can see that it has been divided into two pieces. That's my denominator. So we're working with halves all the way across the number line. All right, let's go ahead and find a name for that point, this point, and this point. If I look at this point, I can see that it is just past a hole. It's not quite to two holes yet, but it is over a hole. In fact, it's one piece past the hole. That means that we could say this point is 1 and 1 piece past the hole. Now we know the size of the piece, these are halves. So this is 1 and 1/2. Then we get to 2 holes, and this point is 1 piece past 2 holes. So this is also 2 and 1 piece. We know that the size of the piece, these are halves, so this point is at 2 and 1/2. This point is past 3 holes. It's not quite to 4 holes, so this is 3 and 1/2. These are the mixed number names for these points. I could still go back and write down the improper fraction names. We have the 1/2 and the whole. We could also say is 2 halves. Then we keep going. We have 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves. Keep going, 6 halves, 7 halves, and then we get to 8 halves, which is the same as 4 wholes. Let's take a look at this number line. It also goes from 0 to 4. It looks like the whole has been divided into more pieces. We've got 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. So we're working with thirds. And we've got 1 piece. So this point is at 1/3. To this point, remember that we're looking for the distance from 0 to this point. So if you start at 0 and slide this way, we're going past 1/3, past 2/3, past 3/3, or in other words, past the whole, and then we're going one more piece. So we could say that the distance is 1 and 1 piece. And again, we know that the size of that piece, these are thirds. So this would be 1 and 1/3. I can keep going and I get to 1 and 2/3, 2 wholes. Keep going, 2 and 1/3, 2 and 2/3, 3 wholes. So 2 and 2/3. And if I wanted to keep going, I could say 3 wholes, 3 and 1/3, 3 and 2/3, 4 wholes. If I wanted to go back and write the improper fraction name above the arrows, I could go back clear to 0 and count pieces. So this would be 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3. And then keep counting 5/3, 6/3, 7/3, 8/3. So these points that are greater than a whole have a mixed number name, and they also have an improper fraction name. I'm going to look and see how many pieces the whole has been split up into. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are working with fourths. I could say that this is 1 whole. This is 1 piece past the whole, so this is 1 and 1/4. If I move to this point, I can see that it's also one piece past 2 holes. It's not quite to 3 holes, but we are past 2 holes. So I would say that this is 2 1/4. And if I move past 3 holes, I can see that we're at 3 something fourths. I need to count these pieces. So I've got 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces. So we're 3 pieces past 3 holes. This point is at 3 3/4. So on the practice page today, we have a lot of different number lines, and we're being asked to find the mixed number for the points as well as the improper fraction. If you look closely at the number line, you can see that the number lines don't show 0, they start at 1. That means that the very first part of the number line has been left off. So it's almost like I'm covering that part up. The values do not change. This is still worth 1 whole, and then 1 1/4. This would be 1 2/4, 1 3/4, 2 wholes, 2 1/4, 2 2/4, 2 3/4, 3 wholes, and so on. It's just that the first part of this number line isn't showing. The distance from 0 to a whole is hidden from view. So when we look, we have to keep in mind there's a part that's not showing. And if you'd like to, on your paper, you can draw a little number line and just show 0, 1, 2, and 3. That will come in handy when we're trying to find the improper fraction. So let's go ahead and look. This point is past a hole. It's not quite to 2 holes, but it is past 1 hole. That means it's somewhere right in here on the number line, somewhere after the hole. So it's 1 hole, and then if I look, the hole has been split into 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. So that's the denominator. And then I can count my pieces. So I have 1, 2 pieces past the hole. So this point is at 1 2/4. Now when I try to find the improper fraction, remember this part's not showing. So we're going to use our knowledge of how many pieces make up a whole and to get this number. So if I were to think about my number line from 0 to 1, how many pieces would there be? You can look at the denominator. Remember there's 4 pieces. So I know that at the whole, that's also worth 4/4. And then from 4/4 I can count on. So I have 4/4, 5/4, 6/4. All right, let's look at number 2. This point is between 2 holes and 3 holes. If my number line started at 0, it would be somewhere in between 2 and 3 holes, somewhere right here. So we know that it's past 2 holes, and I can see that the hole is split up into 3 pieces. So that's the denominator. And if I count my pieces, I've got 1, 2. So we are 2 pieces past 2 holes. So this point is at 2 2/3. Now when I try to think of the improper fraction, I need to think about how many pieces does it take to make 1 whole. And if we're working with thirds, that means there are 3 pieces before the whole. So if I come down here, this would mean that my number line is split up into thirds, and at 1 whole, we're at 3/3. So I like to write that 3/3. Now you can either just mentally add 3 pieces and know that 2 wholes is at 6/3. or you can count the pieces. So 3/3, and then I can keep counting 4/3, 5/3, 6/3. I need to keep counting 7/3, 8/3. Let's look at number 3. I can see that the point is between 2 holes and 3 holes. So that would be between 2 holes and 3 holes. If you put any marks on the number line, make sure you erase those so that they don't confuse you. So we're past 2 holes, and I can see that we're working with halves, and we're 1 piece past the 2 holes, so we're at 1/2. So this is 2 1/2. Now again, I have to think about how many pieces does it take to make a hole. If I was down here on the number line and I'm working with halves, I know that there would be 2 pieces that aren't showing right here. So I'll just write 2 halves, and then I know that there's 2 more pieces, so that's 4 halves, and then I can count 1 more piece, so that's 5 halves. All right, let's do one more. Again, I can see this point is between 2 holes and 3 holes, so we're at 2 and something. I can see that the hole has been divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And then my point is 1, 2 pieces past the 2 holes. So this point is at 2 2/5. When I'm thinking about the improper fraction name, I have to think about how many pieces the whole is split up into. How many pieces there are in a whole. There's 5 pieces in a whole, so 1 whole is 5/5. And then I need to double that to get to 2 wholes. So I know that 2 wholes has 10/5. And if you're not sure about that, please feel free to start at 5/5 and count on. So for example, I would say 5/5, 6/5, 7/5, 8/5, 9/5, 10/5, and then we just count on from there. 11/5, 12/5. Go ahead and finish these practice problems. When you get to number 13, if you need some help, go ahead and watch the video. I'll do a few problems on the second page.